Hello, it's Saturday, August 7th. So I'm going to talk about glazing, and because I'm not actually ready with a bucket of glaze, what I'm going to end up doing is sort of miming it, which is okay because it occurred to me that I've been rather casual in the past when I talked about how to do the glazing. So when you start off glazing, or as a student, in some places what you end up with is small amounts of glaze and brushing them onto your pot. And I was always taught you did north-south, east-west, and then north-south again when you're brushing. So there's a coat of it done this way and then a coat this way, and anyway, so 3 layers of glaze, and these crisscross, and that way you had no bald spots and you got enough glaze and so forth. And obviously that eats up a lot of time. So eventually, hopefully, and some of you may have skipped the brush step entirely, and congratulations, you end up with a bucket of glaze. And usually it's a 5-gallon bucket, sort of a full to there when it's full. It's based on 10,000 grams of dry ingredient and then the rest of water. Art Center actually has some even bigger buckets for the glazes that are really popular. So instead of brushing, we're now going to dunk. But there's more than one way to do that. So one way, for instance, is if this is the pot you're going to glaze, you use something else to scoop up some glaze, pour it in there, and then gradually turn it around here with it dripping out, and then you glaze the rim and as the last part of that. Okay, and that gives an even coat all the way around the inside and some coverage around the top. If you're wood firing, that can be as much as you need to do, because you need a liner glaze, because you can't count on the atmosphere or the process to give you a food safe interior surface. But you're there for the fire and the atmosphere to do things to the outside. So maybe that's enough. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll glaze this far down or whatever. But I'm not generally firing in a wood fuel or a salt environment to put glaze on the outsides of pots. That's not the way it works. Also, if you leave the outside unglazed, then you have the potential in a wood fire or salt fire to tumble stack, or to stack in a way in which the bottom is not necessarily directly below the top. Okay, if you're doing reduction firing or electric firing, and you've done this system, then what you do is, after it's dried a bit, I put my hand on the inside, and I'll just straight down, up, until it covers where I've already glazed. Now, this has 2 challenges and 1 bonus. Okay, the bonus is that because the glaze goes this way and this way, it's a perfectly even coat. Okay, and we'll talk about that later. That can be boring. Okay, that can be a problem. So occasionally, like if I've got a chino, I'll do it like this, and then I'll do like that with my fingers to break up the glaze a bit and to create some activity. The other challenge or problem is that you end up with a double layer of glaze here at the top, because remember you did this before. And that double layer may or may not be a challenge depending on the glaze. It might crawl. I've had it crawl. It'll potentially look noticeably different here than here. Whether that's a problem or not, that's up to you as a maker. Okay. And then we have tongs. These. Okay. So, same sort of mug, but instead we're gripping it with the tongs, plunging it in, shaking it out, setting it down, so forth. This is the ideal, but there's still a problem. The tongs touch the bisque, and if you're clumsy, or if your pot is too thin, or if your pot got bisque too soft, and that's generally like when you bisque to 08, I bisque to 04 so that it's stronger. It's possible to use these tongs to punch holes in your pot or to crush the wall of your pot completely, which of course is not the goal. So there might be a learning curve, or you might just want to be happy that you have thick walls because of that. The other thing too is that where these little points are, there's going to be, oddly enough, a little extra clay or extra glaze, because the glaze sort of gathers around that. And so you'll end up with these two little sort of vampire fang marks. And what you've got to decide is it better to have two of them this way or two of them that way, because those are your choices, horizontal or vertical. Also, often when I'm glazing, I will, after they've dried, use my thumbnail to try to smooth out that extra bit so that it's less obvious that there's that tong mark. Okay, so if you're doing a bowl, again, you got to decide where do you want your tong marks. You're going to do sort of a scooping action, scoop down into it and scoop down, and then pour it out this way. So I mentioned before the challenge in dipping here and having it sort of boring. Well, when you've scooped like that, this part by definition got less glaze than this part, because it went into the glaze last and came out of the glaze first, and the glaze is running off this way, and often that can be seen in the final pot. You can look and see exactly how the potter scooped it in and out of the glaze. So either that excites you and it's wonderful, or it ticks you off, and then you have to find some other method. Okay, still talking about tongs, you get into bigger things, plates and so forth. One of the things you're going to have to calculate, and you might want to do it ahead of time, is does the thing fit in the bucket? Okay, so this just barely does. There's like a 1/2 inch clearance on each side. Okay, so it would work. And then in this case, because there's this strong point here, my tendency is to use the horizontal right there and grip it like that. Those two dots are easier to disguise in the final product than a dot here and a dot there.
You're so clever.
Anyway, so if you don't want to do the whole nerve-wracking, do I have enough glaze? Then you get a bowl, put the glaze in the bowl, and then, oops, got it upside down. And then you, again, scoop it in, scoop it out. Now, part of why I say this is if you scoop it in and then pick it up and dump it, anyway, you're gonna splash, it's gonna be all over you. And you're also, glaze has weight. And so when you're using the tongs, if that whole thing gets heavier, then to hang on to it, you squeeze harder, and that increases the chance that you're gonna punch through that clay, that bisqued clay, with those tongs. So, if you've never seen glazing, with tongs or without, or if you're just doing the transition to glazing in a bucket, tongs are wonderful. They're not all created equal. It is possible for you to have bad tongs. Often bad tongs have a little too much play here, and this part will shift, and the pot will half tumble out of your grip. So if you get the chance to buy them in person, pick them out of the little bin and grab something and see how the grip is. There aren't a lot of tong makers, and there aren't high-end tongs like there are high-end trim tools. But even in the same batch by the same maker, there's good ones and bad ones. And at the Lawrence Art Center, they've got 12 or 15 in the same drawer. And so when I'm opening up the drawer, it's like, well, which one? In fact, there was even a point where I was bringing my own Lucky Tongs because I knew they wouldn't let me down. So that's a little bit about glazing. Have a good day.